the rest of July should be active and warm across the region. There will be periods of cooler than normal temperatures, but July is trending a bit warmer than expected, and that's because we could be getting to a omega block pattern into the middle and end of the month that will bring that warmer, ridging into the region, but probably more active pattern as well with that northwest flow. We could be talking about some derecho risk, or just at least fast-moving, long-lived complexes of thunderstorms across into the region. The SBC in the discussion talked about that being a possibility into next week as well. So as we move into this weekend and into next week, you can see this ridging showing up into the Midwest. The center of the ridge will be in the Midwest at this point, so it's gonna definitely get much hotter again next week. We could be pushing heat index values above 100 degrees in some areas, especially in the plains, and then with the ridge being over the Midwest, it will probably be drier for a period of time next week. But on the northeast edge of this ridge, you can see as it goes slants, down southeast into the Great Lakes region, and that on this northeast area of the ridge, there could be complexes of thunderstorms. The exact placement of this ridge is pretty uncertain right now because, it's pretty far out, and there's model disagreement going on with it. But if this ridge is further southwest, that will increase the potential for complexes happening into the Great Lakes region and in the upper Midwest. But if it sticks being this far north, most of the complexes will end up being in very far northern portions of the upper Midwest and Great Lakes region. And then as we get further into the middle of the month, we start seeing this ridge starting to break down a little bit into like the 14th to the 19th of July. It breaks down a little bit, it gets a little bit weaker, but it also expands further southwest. Now, this ridge that is weaker at this point and expanding further southwest, this will increase the chances for them damaging complexes next week. So this is, next Tuesday through next Sunday. This ridge that's further southwest that will probably bring these complexes that's going to start up here further into the northern plains and northern Minnesota or so, and then dive southeast across the northeast. We have this ridge because that is usually where the warm fronts will set up. All these different boundaries will set up with the greeny of moisture also as well. So this is just a look at the mid-level heights aloft, showing where the ridging is. If you see the blue coming in, that is troughing showing up. So if you go to next weekend and into the week after next week, you start seeing this troughing showing up into the east, but you still have some ridging happening into the plains and stuff. So at least some ridging should persist to the all of the middle of July into the end of July, and then as it starts to weaken a little bit, move southwest, that is where we will see them complexes moving into the Midwest. So probably as soon as next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday time frame, it's probably when we're talking about them complexes into the Midwest. But it is peak season for derechos to begin with. Into the Corn Belt region as the corn starts sweating. I mean, it's a pretty classic setup this time of year anyways. But you can see further west, if I expand this out, further west, you can start seeing this troughing showing up into the Gulf of Alaska as well. If this expands any further south, this will be more of a omega block pattern with a trough in the west, a trough in the east with some ridging into the middle of the country. If you get that omega block pattern, that will really cut down on the potential for complexes of thunderstorms. But as of now, I don't really see that happening too much. I think the troughing will be across the east, mainly because of this ridging for the north of the east. That usually allows for the troughing to happen into the northeast area, and then the Gulf of Alaska troughing that usually just sits there this time of year as well. But there's definitely a site for much warmer air, but more of a northwest flow as well. We can see that by the mid-level winds, as you see. So let's take it back down to the United States. as you see, as we get into next week, you start seeing that there's more of a northwest flow starting to set up to the region. Now, this is the operational Euro model. It's not the ensemble. It's pretty far north until you get to next weekend on the jet stream. And that would likely keep the complexes further north along the border of the United States and Canada. But um, if you go to the ensemble, I'm pretty sure it's further south than this. It's about the same actually. So it seems that it would middle of next week. This right here would put some complexes into Minnesota and Wisconsin as well. But as that ridge begins to break down and expand further southwest, because now it's over here in Colorado, this polar jet will expand further south, and that will allow for them complexes to be into the Corn Belt to the middle and end of July. So I don't really see a hyperactive July, the rest of July, but I still see probably 1 to 3 severe weather events per week. Kind of like this week, we got severe weather today that I will talk about briefly, and then tomorrow further south, and that's pretty much it for us this week. Next week, it's probably going to be a similar look, but just definitely a look of a ring of fire pattern setting up. And if you want to look at the moisture levels, which shouldn't be, I don't know why we look at that in July, but there's gonna be plenty, like dew point's gonna be plenty high enough as we get into next week as well. You got pretty high moisture, but with this northwest flow, it can sometimes be hard to get the very deep moisture setting up. I mean, anytime you have a system, you need to pull them 70s dew points well up into the Midwest as well. But you can see that these outlook as you get towards the end of July, you get that outlook there. But again, that's way far out. I'm looking at the temperature from average as we get into next week. It's a pretty interesting look again. It's very warm next week in the Midwest. Temperatures are running 10 to 15 degrees above average the middle and end of next week. But further south, temperatures will be below average. But again, that's because of what I showed at the beginning of the video, the middle of a ridging that was showing up into the Midwest, and that will allow for the very warm temperatures to take place. As you can see, next week we're going to be pushing temperatures with that ridging up into 80s and low 90s for temperatures next week. But dew points don't look incredibly high because of that weird northwest type of flow component. As you see, the heat index is much higher than the temperatures as you get into the middle of next week. And yes, this is 7 to 9 days out, but temperatures don't really change too much unless there's thunderstorms around. But yeah, not until we get some greater moisture, that's when you can get the heat index higher than that. So we're gonna have very warm temperatures next week, but dew points won't be impressive, meaning the heat index won't be as high as what we just had about a week ago. For now, at least. It's summertime, so we want to get them periods. We're gonna get the heat index of 105 degrees. Yeah, we're not done with that at all. But looking at the precipitation stuff, you can see 7 days. You have a week long of. Okay, I don't know why that's saying fair to load. It looks very dry next week. These are, precipitation from average. As dry as a half inch to an inch below average in a week's time frame for next week. So definitely have a pretty dry pattern, I guess, over the next week and a half or so. But it's just still getting active as that ridge breaks down a little bit. This ensemble doesn't really have that happening, but it is the Euro ensemble. It sucks. Anyways, it has a pretty big bias onto the temperatures and precipitation, being the opposite of what usually happens to begin with. This is GFS ensemble, and it's actually still pretty dry as well. But I do think it should start getting pretty active. A little more active than what the ensemble show because of that ring of fire type of pattern. Because these models are showing that jet stream being further north because of the be further north placed ridge into the Midwest as well. But I do think the ridge will break down pretty easily as we get after next week or so. And then, because these are the temperatures from average as we get into the last week of July, above average temperatures. I mean, for the whole Midwest and into the southern plains as well. So it's a pretty warm and dry pattern ahead, but there will be periods of severe weather complexes. But these things are usually fast moving to begin with, so they don't really they don't really bust a drought to begin with as well. I mean, because with how fast they move. But any complexes that can train over a certain area will bring flooding probably. So a brief look at the of today's sea weather before this video is over. As we get to about 7 p.m. this evening, there will be a line of severe thunderstorms from Wisconsin down to Minnesota, Iowa, and into Nebraska. There will be some severe weather potential as well, with large hail, damaging winds, and isolated tornadoes possible. But the tornado threat looks pretty low. But any matured supercell, at least semi-discrete supercell that can get going, will pose a risk for tornadoes and very large hail. But other than that, it looks like a damaging wind day ahead into these areas as well. So thank you guys for watching this video, and we will have another one out tomorrow.